Alright, it has been 4 weeks since the last time we've worked on this project. The reason it's been so long is first, we were in the middle of part 3 of this project, then the storm hit, we lost power, couldn't work with that power, and then once we finally got power, then I had to get ready for the Durhamtown trip that we had planned, and then 2 days after getting back from Durhamtown, I got pretty badly sick. I think I caught the flu or something. I don't know what that was, but basically I've been bedridden for over a week now. I'm finally feeling better. I'm not 100%, but at least I can stand up and move around without getting super lightheaded and dizzy. So let's finally get back to working on this project. Now I'm trying to remember, what were we working on in part 3 when I had to stop working on this? I think we were working on the front suspension. And I think we were in the middle of the front-bottom A-arms, so let's finish working on those, get those mocked up, then we can install them in the frame and figure out where the front shocks are going to go. Alright, so I'm slowly realizing I think I bought way too big of tires for this project. So the tire diameter is almost 24 inches, but the spacing between this and this corner right here is 24 inches. So it's like, how in the world am I going to get this tire to fit in here and make sure it has room enough to turn, room enough to move up and down with the suspension travel and everything. So I've been spending about 25 minutes trying to make sure that this is in the right spot, make sure the spindle has about a 10-degree angled back for proper alignment and everything. And I think this is now in a good spot. So this, we definitely have to cut off. This has to go. For this side, I could always taper this down a little bit to take off about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch if we need to on this side. And I think that'll be enough room for the tire. I really hope. Yeah, I think this is now in the spot we need, so let me tack these in place. Alright, now before we figure out how we're doing the top A-arms, we first need to add a piece of tubing going from here over this, and then down here somewhere, so therefore we have a spot to mount the top A-arms. Now before we do that, we first need to figure out where the shocks are going to go. Now I ordered shocks for this project for the front, but I ordered them before the storm, and since the storm, they were unfortunately lost in shipping. But I didn't find out they were lost in shipping until like 2.5 or 3 weeks later after I bought them. So I had to get a refund, I had to order them again, so unfortunately they didn't get here in time. But last night I quickly stole these off of the electric YZ85 project. These are the exact same shocks we're using that I bought for this project. So we'll use these for mock-up, but then when the other shocks I ordered get here, we'll use those for this project, and I'll put these back on the electric YZ85. Now, because of the size tires we're using for this project, and because I don't really want this project being super top heavy and super high in the air, we're unfortunately not really going to be able to have that much suspension travel with this project, so therefore we have to mount the shocks further this way towards the A-arms, but that kind of is an advantage because that means more leg room in the middle right here. So now, I've been looking at this, trying to figure out exactly where to mount these, and I'm kind of thinking just mount them right here. If we need to further adjust them later on, we can always do that later on. Or if I need to add bump stops or limiting straps to this, we can always do that. So I'm just going to mount them right here, and then we need to figure out exactly where the piece of tubing is going to go from here over, then down to here. So therefore we can have a spot to mount the top A-arms. Now I know doing this in 2 pieces is kind of the lazy way of doing something like this. Ideally, the best way is to have this all one piece, but this piece of tubing, this part of the tubing needs to be in the exact spot that I need it to be, and then there's a bend here, and they are clocked offset by each other by an unknown amount, so that just kind of really makes it complicated trying to bend this in one piece. So for me, this is just a lot faster just to do it in 2 separate pieces. Alright, so we got half of the top A-arm installed. Now my original idea for the other half was I was going to mount another heim joint right here and just have a piece of tubing going from here over to here, but now I'm realizing that once I lower the suspension and mount the top of the shock where I want it, when the suspension moves up, that piece of tubing is going to hit the bottom of this, so that's not going to work. So now I'm thinking, what if I mount the heim joint on this side? It is going to make it to where these 2 heim joints are kind of really close together, but I mean, with how short this top A-arm is and how tiny it is, I think it'll be fine. What? That is not good. Not good right there. Great. Well, at least it mostly clears this, and like I said before, I can take a little bit of this material off to make it clear better, which I'm probably going to have to. So, the front suspension is pretty much finished. Now, it's a bit unfortunate that we are running into some clearance issues with that. Yeah, I definitely need to fix that. We need more turning radius than this. Now, pretty much the only way I can think of on how to solve this is take these 3 pieces of tubing, let's go into this piece of tubing, and just move them further back, which is not impossible, it's just, you know, yeah, just having to redo stuff, which is always annoying, but like I said before, I am slightly regretting choosing this big of tires. I kind of wish I chose smaller tires because I'm just having issues trying to get these big tires to fit and work with this, you know, small vehicle. Now, right now, let's reinstall the rear suspension, so therefore we can figure out the ride height of this vehicle and get the mounts for the top of the shocks on the front finished, as well as getting the rear shocks installed. Alright, so for the rear suspension, I first need to figure out how much suspension travel I think this setup can have. Again, we're not trying to get as much suspension travel as possible out of this project. We're mainly just wanting just a little bit of suspension travel because of the big tires. So I first need to figure out how much suspension travel I think this setup can have, and then set it at its lowest point, and then I'll figure out exactly where this shock should be mounted to allow for when this bottoms out, it's close to the top of where the suspension travel should stop, and then I'll mount the shock right around there. Okay, so I really wanted to get the shocks installed and figure out the ride height and all that kind of stuff in this video, but I first tacked the top of the shocks in place, and then I realized, hang on, wait a minute. This is where the engine has to go, right where the shocks are going to go. So now I'm just kind of like, hang on, wait a minute, we need to figure this out. So basically, I've been staring at this for about a day now, trying to figure out how to get this set up to work. Because honestly, I haven't really completely decided on what engine we're using for this project. I know I said in a couple videos ago of this project that we are trying to see if we can find a 4-stroke engine, because in my mind, a 4-stroke goes along with the whole muscle car theme versus a 2-stroke. But honestly, I think a snowmobile engine would work better in here, because I have been looking into seeing if I can find a Polaris Sportsman, like a 450 or a 500 engine. But the problem with Polaris Sportsman engines is they're really, really tall, and it'd be kind of a challenge to try to get it to fit in here. I mean, it'd stick out, up to here, and then I don't know if that would work. I don't know if the belt's long enough. So I'm more leaning towards using the Polaris XLT 600, just because they're pretty powerful engines once you get them running right and not overheating anymore. They're pretty powerful, they're lightweight, and they're small, and they're short. It actually fits perfectly in here, but now that I put the shocks here, I did have an idea of what if I could see if I could find a longer belt, so therefore I can move the engine back to, because there's plenty of space back here, but I'm not sure if I could find a long enough belt to go all the way from here to this. Then I had an idea of, what if I took the secondary pulley and put it on a jack shaft right here, that way I can move it over a little bit, center the engine a little bit better, and then just run a chain and sprockets from the jack shaft to this. But I know how much you guys love chain drive, and I was really trying to make it to where we didn't have chain drive for this project. So I'm gonna see if we can find a longer belt. If not, we may have to do the chain drive and the jack shaft idea, or I could just try and figure out a different spot to mount these shocks or something. I've been trying to see if I can find other snowmobile engines. I mean, a 2-cylinder would work a lot better and fit a lot easier in here. I've been trying to see if I can find 2-cylinder snowmobile engines. I did find 2 of them. A guy is selling 2 of them in Georgia for $1,700, but it's a smaller engine. They're 550. They're air-cooled, which would be nice. We wouldn't have to have a radiator, but they're smaller, and they only produce around 65 horsepower, which I think is enough for this project. But the XLT 600 is around 95 horsepower, so it's just more power. Part of me is just kind of like, what if we just slap a Predator 670 in this thing? It would kind of make this a lot simpler, a lot easier. It would fit perfect in here. The shocks would still be able to go right here. We would have electric starts. We wouldn't have to have a radiator. But honestly, I mean, Predator engines are nice, but they're kind of just overused in my opinion on YouTube, and they're not really that fast. They're heavy. They don't really rev that much unless you dump a bunch of money into them, which I could, but in my opinion, Predator 670s, they're just kind of overused, in my opinion, on YouTube. So I'd like to use a snowmobile engine because they're lighter and way more power and way, almost twice the RPM of a Predator 670. Anyway, we'll figure all that out in the next video of this project, but for now, I'm going to end this video here. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video.